Good morning, students. Welcome back to your English class. Today, we will learn a new lesson of English. Children, you might have heard the various inspiring stories of various scientists like Einstein, Newton, various inspiring stories of various players like Ronaldo, Dhyan Chand. Today, we will learn a lesson. The name of the lesson is Helen Keller, and this is also an inspiring story of courage, strength, determination, and hard work of Helen Keller. This lesson conveys the message when the going gets tough, the tough get going. You know, children, this means when the things are tough around us, we should also be strong enough, tough enough to face the challenges, to face the problems, to face the situations. Okay, so however situation is there or whatever is the problem, we should face it bravely. We should face the situation bravely. Now let's see the lesson, children. Helen Keller. This is the story of a child who became completely deaf and blind before she had learned to talk. Because of her own courage and also that of her own wonderful teacher, she learned to talk and write. She was able to go to school and to college and to live a full and happy life. You know, children, this is a story of a child who became completely deaf and blind before she had learned to talk. Children, most of you have seen babies learn to talk as they listen others or when they see the things around them. But here, this girl, this baby was deaf and blind before she learned to talk. But because of her own courage and of her wonderful teacher, she learned to talk as well as to write. She went to school and to college and she lived a full and happy life. Who was Helen Keller, children? Helen was born in 1880 in a small town in the southern USA. At 18 months, when she was beginning to talk, she suddenly became terribly ill and very nearly died. When she recovered, she was completely deaf and blind. Children, Helen was born in the year 1880 in a small town in the southern USA. When she was just 18 months old and she was beginning to talk, she became terribly, means seriously she became ill and she was nearly died. When she recovered means, children, when she returned to health, she was completely deaf and blind. It is very difficult for a deaf child to learn to talk. Most babies learn by hearing other people talking. But the deaf child cannot hear anyone, so how can she know what talking sounds like? You know, children, it's very, very difficult for a deaf child to learn to talk because babies learn by hearing other people talking around them. But deaf child cannot hear anyone, so how can the child know what talking sounds like? Many deaf people learn to lip read. Means by touching the lips they understand what do the people say, and they become very clever at understanding what other people are saying by watching them. But Helen could not see what other people were doing. She remembered a few words she had known before she was ill. For instance, she went on calling water wah, wah. But she had to make signs for most things. She would shake her head for no and nod for yes. A pull meant come and a push go. But of course, she could say very little like this, and she depended entirely on other people. Children, here there are some children, they are good in lip reading, and they become clever when they see other people talking and they understand what do they say. But here the problem was totally different. Helen could not see what other people were doing. She just remembered a few words that she had known before she was ill. For example, she went on calling water wah wah. Children, as she was very small at the time, and she just learned water as wah wah, but she had to make signs for most of the things. Like she had to shake her head for no and nod for yes. And pull means to come and a push means to go. But by doing all this, she could say very little things, and she depended entirely on other people as she was unable to do her own works also. Yet Helen had an active mind and a clever brain and wanted to do and say everything any other child would. Children, Helen was having a very active mind. I mean, she was very clever, she was very active, and she wanted to do everything as other children do. She used to get into terrible tempers when she could not explain what she meant or understand what others wanted. Children, sometimes she gets very angry, terribly, seriously. She used to get angry because she was unable to explain the people what she meant to say, or sometimes she was unable to understand what people wanted to say to her. Then when Helen was nearly 7, Anne Sullivan came to teach her and look after her. This clever and devoted teacher changed Helen's life. Children, when Helen was 7 years old at the time, Anne Sullivan came to teach her. Means Anne Sullivan was her teacher. She used to look after her, and this teacher Anne Sullivan was very clever and very devoted. Devoted means, children, very committed teacher, and this teacher helped a lot to change Helen's life. Anne Sullivan herself had been nearly blind and had been at a school for blind people. There, Anne Sullivan had learned the finger spelling method. She felt sure that this was the only way to talk to Helen and teach her to say what she wanted. But Helen could not see her making the signs. She would spell the words onto her pupil's hand. Helen had become very sensitive to the feel of things, much more sensitive than most people are. She could soon tell the difference between the feel of one letter and another. Children, Anne Sullivan was also nearly blind, and she was there in one of the school for the blind people to teach them. Anne Sullivan had learnt the finger spelling method. She learned the finger spelling method, and she felt that this was the only way to talk to Helen and to teach her to say what she wanted. Because Helen could not see her making the signs, she would spell the words onto her pupil's hand. Children, they would they were writing the spelling of the different words on their hands. Helen had become very sensitive. Sensitive means, children, respond to the feelings of others, and she was more sensitive than the other people have. She could even tell the difference between the feel of one letter and another. Miss Sullivan gave Helen a doll, and when she gave it, she spelled the letters doll onto Helen's hand. She did this with the names of other things such as cake and mug. Helen obediently spelled them back, but she did not understand what it all meant, and she soon grew bored and unhappy. She wouldn't try anymore, and poor Anne Sullivan did not know what to do next. Children, Miss Sullivan gave Helen a doll, and she spelled the letters doll onto Helen's hand. Then she did the same with the other things like cake, C-A-K-E, then mug, M-U-G. Helen very obediently following her teacher, and she spelled them back whatever teacher wrote. But she did not understand what it all meant, and soon she grew bored because she couldn't know what the things were, because she was deaf as well as blind, children, right? So she couldn't hear the name of the things, and because of that, what happened, she started getting bored and she became unhappy, and she stopped trying anymore. And then her teacher Anne Sullivan did not know what to do next. Then, children, one day Miss Sullivan took Helen outside to the water pump. As the water spilled into Helen's mug and overflowed on her hand, Miss Sullivan spilled water on her other hand. Suddenly, Helen's face lit up. She understood that water was the name of this cold, wet stuff, and it came to her in a flash that everything has a name. Children, what happened? One day, Miss Sullivan took Helen outside to the water pump, and then when the water overflowed into Helen's mug, spilled means it came out of Helen's mug and overflowed on her hand. Miss Sullivan spelled at the time W-A-T-E-R on her other hand, and at that time Helen's face lit up, means her face started shining brightly because of happiness. She understood that WATER was the name of the cold, wet stuff, and it came to her in a flash, in a light, immediately, that everything has a name. Then, children, touching her little sister, she spelled BABY, which was one of the words Miss Sullivan had shown her. When she touched her little sister, that time her teacher spelled the word BABY, and this was also taught by Miss Sullivan. All that day and for days after, Helen darted from one thing to the next, demanding that Miss Sullivan should spell their names for her. Children, as she learned the word WATER, water, and baby, then on that day and after that day, Helen darted means she started running suddenly from one thing to the next thing, and she started demanding Miss Sullivan to spell the name of those things for her. She became so excited she could hardly control herself. Children, Helen couldn't see the things, she was just feeling it. So she was very excited and she was unable to control herself. At last, words began to have a meaning for her, and she then learned the names of actions. First, children, she learned the name of the objects, and then she learned the name of the actions as well as things like sit, stand, run, walk, and then descriptions of things like actions, descriptions of things and actions like hard, soft, quickly, slowly, everything she started learning one by one. As she was very active and she was having clever brain, So, what happened next, children, how she went to school and how she completed her education in the school and colleges, we'll see in the next video. Thank you.